Hi everyone, my name is Jennifer Nichols and I teach Procreate. I have dozens of classes, a private membership, and I just have a lot of fun doing this. So I wanted to give you a quick lesson on how to get this really fun paper collage look really easily and simply. I am going to quickly show you how to make your own little pieces of paper with your mark making, and then how to get the shadows just right. Let's get started. So I have my little balloon sketch here and some palette spots over here where I was working my way through trying to figure out what color I wanted the balloons to be. And I decided on these colors over here. So what I want to do, I'm going to go ahead. You can see my scraps don't need to be that big. We're just going to make some fun paper scraps over here. So I'm going to turn my gnome off, and I can turn the balloons off, and I'm going to do a fresh layer and keep my palette there. You can have your palette over here, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to go ahead and pick my first color. I'm on a fresh layer, and I can tap the selection and freehand and just make a nice big scrap piece of paper and drop my color in. That's it for that one. Now I can pick my next color, find another spot, go to the little magic ribbon tool and find another patch on the same layer or a different layer and drag and drop that one. And my next color and my next patch. So this is just a super simple way to make little scrap pieces of paper that you're going to cut from, and you can do your mark making here. You can add your textures here, and let's go ahead and add our textures because we don't want paper to just look perfectly smooth. So I'm going to add a layer above it, and I'm going to turn it into a clipping mask so it only shows up on these scraps, and pick a gray, just a mid-tone gray, and go to, if you go to my potpourri set, which is a newsletter freebie, I've got some textures there, and then my mixed media set has one texture at the bottom, so you have a few there to choose from. I'm sure some of my older freebies also have some, and if you're in my membership, you have a whole entire big giant canvas texture brush set that is yours for using for this purpose. I like using canvas textures on a lot of my things. I'm just going to go ahead for just ease of this lesson and do one linen texture here over all three pieces. All right, so I'm on a clipping mask and I'm on a gray. For that linen texture, I know from experience I need a slightly darker gray, and you can pick your grain size over there, and I am just going over the top of these, making sure I get it all in one stroke, and you can kind of see it. We're going to play with blend modes here. I'm going to duplicate that layer, so swipe to the left and duplicate, and now I'm going to turn 1 to multiply and 1 to color burn. So I'm tapping on the N and changing 1 to multiply and 1 to color burn. And you can see how gorgeous that texture is on the blue. It's working out great on the pink and on the orange. If you need to adjust the opacity on just one of the colors, for example, let's say you want the color burn layer on this blue to not be so dark. I can go to that color burn layer and I can grab with the magic wand or the ribbon tool and grab that whole section of the canvas, that canvas texture, and I can go to my layers menu here and 2-finger tap on that layer, and now I have opacity, and I can drag my opacity down, and it's just for that selection right there. So you can play around and adjust if you have all your scraps on one layer like this. And you need to adjust the opacity of your textures individually, that's how you can do it. I'm going to do some mark making now. So I'm going to add another layer, and I'm going to do the mark making on top. I don't want the mark making to look like it's under that linen, so you can do it however you'd like. Let's see, I'll go to white and my mixed media freebie set. And here's my Neocolor 2. And let's do some white dots on the blue paper. Just go ahead and do any amount of mark making you want on your scraps of paper. I know you don't have the balloons, but you could be doing balloons if you're following along. And even though my balloons are tiny and I don't really need to fill this whole scrap, I can actually keep this scrap later. I don't have to make a new scrap of paper every time I want to do some collage work. I can keep this and maybe make a new file where each section in your layers is a scrap of paper that you've already made all your marks on. And you can use it in future projects, just like you're digging through a drawer of scraps. Because even though we're cutting out a balloon, we're not going to actually cut it. So you'll be able to use this over and over. All right, and I'm going to go to, gosh, I think I'm going to stick with white and go to Posca and make some lines for this. Now you could also turn this layer into a clipping mask, and that will contain everything on your paper. So you could draw a line like this and it only shows up on your paper. So that's also an option. Let's see, I think I'll do Prismacolor, and maybe I'll just stick with white on all of them, but you can do any mark making you want. So here's some little pencil marks, or maybe I want some scales. And I'm rushing, but you can take as much time as you'd like. And I'm just kind of, for now, filling this one little area that I can do a balloon. All right. So now I have some great little scraps of paper, and I am going to merge all of those together. All right, all on one layer. Those are my scraps. I can go ahead and add more to this on later if I want. And now I'm going to remind myself I don't need my palette anymore, so I can turn that off. I'm going to turn on my sketch of my balloons, turn on my gnome, and I can see how big my balloons need to be. So I'm on my paper scrap layer. All right, I'm going to the little ribbon tool on freehand, and I'm going to make a selection and tap the little dot, making sure add is on. And I can't really see my selection very well, so I'm going to go to the wrench icon, go to prefs, and I can turn up my selection mask visibility so I can really see it. And now I can see, do I want to add a little more, right? So you can kind of, since add is on, I can go, oh, I think I'm going to grab a little more of that and tap the dot. We can erase some of it later too. And I'm going to make the little doohickey down there. I'm going to grab another one over here. Big balloon, little doohickey. All right, and over here, smaller balloon maybe, because I didn't draw that much over there on the mark making. All right, now if I 3-finger swipe down and cut and paste, then I have my balloons. They're on a separate layer, but I also have all of my nice scraps are cut out and I can't really use them very well. So I'm not going to do it that way. I am going to 2-finger tap to undo until I got all of this back to my selection. So if you 3-finger swipe down and duplicate, it's going to essentially do the same thing. I still have my balloons on a separate layer. There they are. But my paper is still exactly how it was. So the duplicate just took a copy of those papers. All right, so let's turn that off. We're done with that for now, and we have our 3 balloons. I need them on different layers, so while this layer is selected, I can just grab one, 3-finger swipe down, cut and paste. just cuts it off that layer. Go back down to that layer, grab it, 3 finger swipe down, cut and paste. So now they're on separate layers and I can put them where I want them. All right, let's get that orange one out of the way here. So I'm going to put the orange one in the back, which means I need it to be on the lowest layer out of all 3 of these balloons. And you can see this balloon needs to be on the highest layer because it's covering the other 2. So I am going to stick my orange one there and rotate it a little. This line is not going to be seen. It's going to be under this balloon. So I don't really have to line up my little knot on the balloon. Now I want to, I think I'm going to have this blue one be on top, which means I need to bring it to the top layer above the orange one. And now I do want to line this one up to the string. All right, deselect. Try not to move and deselect multiple times, especially if you're rotating. And this pink one, I want it to be under the blue one, but on top of the orange one. Right now it's under all of them. So if we move it into place, it's hiding under all of them. If I slide that layer above the orange layer, then it is on top of the orange one and it's still under the blue one. I ended up making that balloon a little small. I am going to increase the size a little bit. You can do that a little bit in Procreate, not too much. All right, and I'm lining up the little bottom part with my string and I'm just kind of getting it approximately where the sketch was and turn my sketch layer off. Super cute. I love that. All right. Now you've done your paper making and your texture on your paper and your mark making. Now we just need to do the shadows. So now I need a shadow under each layer and we're going to turn them to the multiply blend mode. We're going to blur them. We're going to make them black and turn the opacity down. So in Procreate, it used to be that a duplicate was a slightly lesser quality, and I would have wanted to have the duplicate be on the bottom so that that can be the one that we turn black, but it doesn't really matter anymore. It's pretty good. The duplicates are pretty good. So I'm going to swipe left and duplicate this blue one, and you can see it looks just the same. If you toggle these on and off, they really look the same. So I can go ahead and just go to the original down below here and 2 finger swipe to the right to alpha lock it, or you can tap it and turn alpha lock on right there. All right, duplicate this one, duplicate this one. We're going to batch this. Alpha lock, whoops, I just did opacity. Alpha lock, go to black, grab the bottom blue balloon, fill layer, the bottom pink balloon, fill layer, the bottom orange balloon, fill layer. Now we can't blur it while alpha lock is on, so we need to turn alpha lock off. And now we can go ahead and blur it, or we can, doesn't matter what order we do this in. Tap the N and turn it to multiply. And let's turn the opacity down to about 50. I think it's probably going to need, let's do 40. Tap the N on this black layer, go to multiply, slide the opacity to about 40. Tap the N on this layer, go to multiply, slide the opacity to about 40. All right, and now we can blur each one. So I'm on this one. I'm going to go to the little magic wand, Gaussian blur, and you'll see the percentage here. You just need to slide your pencil. You can experiment with this. It's this one right here. I've been going to about 2 or 3%. So I'm going to do 3% today. Tap the next one, Gaussian blur, 3%. Tap the next one, Gaussian blur, 3%. All right, those are ready. They're just sitting directly under each one, and we need to shift them around a little bit to make them pop out here and there. Now you could select all of them and shift them all in one direction, kind of like you do with drop shadows for things. but we're gonna do it a little differently. So I'm gonna take this blue shadow layer here, and I'm gonna go to liquify. So if you go to the magic wand and come down to liquify and push, I have momentum and distortion off, pressure up, and then you can just pick a size that ends up being something you can play around with size. That ends up being something where you can really move the bigger pieces or smaller pieces of the shadow however you want. So I just exposed this shadow right here. Can you see that? So by exposing a tiny bit, it's made that paper look like it's bumped up there. Let me show you another spot over here. Right there. I'm going to go to a smaller size. If you expose a little bit of this little, whatever this is called, doohickey. See, if just by pulling the shadow out from under it, it looks like this paper is lifted up off the blue background here. So you can go around, play with size, you can expose a little here and there, make sure the rest is tucked in. Because we blurred it, you probably can't really see it, but there is a slight blur all the way around it. So if you really tuck in a shadow, oops, we're not on that layer. If you really tuck in a shadow here and there, it'll really make that paper piece look like it's glued down. So having some that's glued down looking and some that's raised up makes it look less flat, a little bit less digital. All right, I'm going to go to the pink shadow, liquify. Pop some shadows out from underneath. Push some shadows back in more. Maybe over here I'll have that come out. All right, you don't have to spend much time on this at all. And I'm on the orange layer. I don't need to worry about what's behind here. We can't see that. I'm going to make sure that one is really well hidden. Hopefully you can see that on camera. Tuck that one in, pull this one out, tuck that one in. That's it. That's it. That's all you need to do. So now your little gnome looks like it's got like a painted gnome, painted strings, and paper collage balloons right on top. Each of these little guys looks like they're raised up off the paper. Super cute. Now, I forgot to mention, when I see this little jig-jag here, when you make your selection, before you make your shadow, you can clean things up. So if I really wanted that blue balloon to have a slightly different shape, I could go back to this freehand selection tool and just kind of grab a couple of these little spots, 3-finger swipe down and cut and smooth it out a little more. I would just want to do that before making the shadow. But even now I can go ahead and go back to that shadow layer, liquify, and adjust that shadow. So it's, there's workarounds if you forgot to do that and you don't want to redo your shadow. All right. Hopefully you can see that really easily on screen. Have fun mark making. There is another whole video on how to use this mixed media brush set and a whole video on how to get your canvas textures over your whole piece, which is just the same thing that we did over our little scrap papers. So if you need a reminder on that, I'll link both of those down below, as well as some blog posts. All right, have fun.